Que lo que miente, welcome to my universe, welcome back to my universe, welcome to another episode of the Things I Never Said podcast. This is Starlini speaking, pero ya tu sabe. So I want to share this quote. I will put it on the screen for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and then for those of you who are listening to the podcast on other platforms, I will also read it to you. All right, so the quote says, "It's okay to not know how things are going to turn out." I will repeat that. It is okay not to know how things are going to turn out. It further goes on to explain that life is rarely ever predictable. It says the truth is, we were never guaranteed that we would have the answers for everything or feel certainty in every situation. That's part of this journey's adventure. To get from where we are to where we want to be, we are required to trust, hope, and believe, and dare to blaze the trail even when the path in front of us looks near impossible. The secret to life isn't about knowing the future or having the perfect roadmap, but rather having faith for the future and the spirit of a pioneer. Whew. Okay, so this one is a lesson that was very hard for me to learn and apply to myself growing up. And even to this day, I think that I have to remind myself sometimes that it's okay to have a little bit of anxiety about the uncertainty in my life. I recognize that life is unpredictable. Life has been unpredictable. I didn't know 5 years ago that I would be here today. I hoped, and I drew images and I wrote stories sort of depicting the lifestyle that I wish I could live. And I don't have exactly all of that, but I'm definitely a lot closer now than I ever was 5 years ago or 10 years ago when I first started to envision what a quote unquote better life looked like for me. It is okay to have a bit of uncertainty about your life and where you're heading. What I have learned and had to tell myself is that there's not really a right or wrong way. There's just what direction you want to go in at that time, and you have to have a willingness to deal with whatever consequences or whatever outcomes you have, no matter how negative or how positive. You have to just be willing to deal with whatever it is you set yourself up for. Like they say, you reap what you sow. So if you're going to be bold enough to plant certain seeds, you just have to be bold enough and courageous enough to accept what you end up growing in that garden of yours. I think that right now in this life, a lot of us are probably going through things that we feel we have little to no control over. I know that I have been feeling like that for quite some time. And it's hard for me to take my fingers off of the steering wheel of this journey that I'm on, because I've not been able to rely on people as much as I've had to rely on myself, nor have I been able to rely on other people as consistently as I have relied on myself. It's not to say at all that people have not helped me. It's to say that oftentimes I've been the one person that I can count on to get up and to show up when it's time to. That's just how it is in your life. When the curtain calls, you have to appear on that stage, not other people. Other people have the choice to be there for you, but you have to be there. Whether the situation that you're facing is good or bad, whether no matter how difficult, no matter how challenging, you have to be there. So imagine when you're an independent person, when you're somebody, who has gone through emancipation and you've been a minor but considered an adult for quite some time, you walk in this life differently. There's a lot of responsibility that you have on your shoulders at a younger age, especially if you're somebody like me who started living in her own place at a younger age and so on and so forth. It's resulted in me having to depend on myself. So just imagine like how difficult things can be when I don't know where the path that I am walking down is leading me. And it's not because I'm blind. It's not because I'm foolishly or aimlessly running into the darkness. It's just because there's some things that take time. Everything is a process. And when it comes to certain things, it doesn't matter how much effort you put towards it. Sometimes you can only put a certain amount of energy towards it, and then you have to quote unquote let go and let God. That's what people say, right? But my issue has always been, well, God doesn't pay the bills. Faith doesn't pay the bills. Hope doesn't pay the bills. Faith doesn't get you out of a toxic relationship. Action does, assuming you even make it out alive. So when you're suffering from an abusive relationship, as I was, when you are somebody coming from a poor background, as I was, like having as much faith as I did seemed to have done nothing for me. I'm just being very honest. Faith didn't stop me from getting my behind handed to me by my own biological parents. It didn't stop me from being bullied and degraded by my own biological siblings or by people at school. Faith didn't protect me or shield me from that. And I was angry at this divine entity called God when I was in middle school, because it seemed also that God did not shield me from any of the suffering that I faced. But I think that years and years had to pass before I could realize that faith was simply the flame in me that kept that fire within me lit. And it was faith that I deserved better. It was the knowing that I could do better that guided me out of that situation, even when I didn't recognize that I was receiving any kind of guidance. I guided myself. Some people can say, oh, there was God in that. Like I said, I don't know about all that. I believe that there is a divine entity, but I believe that we have a lot more control over our circumstances than we give ourselves credit for. And like I said, action is what changes your circumstances. It's not sitting around and waiting for God to make a decision for you. It's action, in my humble opinion. You can be mad if you want to. I really don't care. Because it wasn't until, as much faith as I had, it wasn't until I took myself out of that situation that things started to change for me. It wasn't until I became an emancipated minor. It wasn't until I left. It wasn't until I started working. It wasn't until I got my own apartment. It wasn't until I started to do spoken word poetry and tell my story that things started to change for me. And I was able to see how action was the one thing that I needed to consistently take in order for things to get better for me. It's good to have faith. You should have faith in yourself. And I believe, if you do believe in God, whether you're religious or spiritual, that it is important to have faith that that divine entity is guiding you. I will say that it's important to have faith. But I think what this quote is referring to is having patience with yourself and trusting the process. There are some things that you go through in this life just to learn a few things. Maybe if you're suffering and you're struggling right now, this is just one of those seasons during which you have to learn a few things, so that when you get into a new situation later on, all those lessons that you picked up from your previous situation will start to dawn on you. And then you won't make a mistake, or you won't make a bad decision that maybe you would have made it had you not paid attention during this season of learning. It is the faith that I had that I would get out of my situation, from my upbringing, that lets me know that I should have even more faith in myself now, because I'm able to say to myself honestly that if I could get through what I went through in my previous situation, then I can get through anything. If I could survive and if I could overcome the things that I was put through, the abuse, the suffering, the neglect, the starvation, everything, then I know that whatever I'm going through now is nothing compared to that. It's just a season of learning. It's just a season of growing pains. And I'm a firm believer that it always, well, I don't know. I think there's a quote like, the sun always shines after the storm. But the way that I say it is that things are always good after they are bad. Just a simple way of putting it. Things get better right after they have become worse than you could ever imagine. And that's what I've seen play out in my own life over and over and over again. So I think having patience with yourself is important. I think trusting the process is important. You may not recognize right now that the divine entity that we call God or Spirit is preparing you for the next chapter in your life. And you may feel helpless, as I have felt plenty of times, but you have to just remember to believe in yourself. Don't sit down and wait for things to come to you, no matter how low you may feel, or no matter how confused or uncertain you may feel. Continue to get up and better yourself. Continue to invest in yourself. Do things for yourself. Take care of yourself. If you have, documentation to fill out, fill it out. If you have something that you need to submit it. If you have information that you need to look for in order to understand what you're preparing yourself for, do the research, do the work, invest in yourself. Don't ever get to a point where you have no faith at all in yourself, that you just lay down and let yourself wither away and let time pass you by, because that's not going to help you at all. When you're feeling down and when you're feeling disappointment from so many other aspects in your life and people in your life, the worst thing you can do is then direct that same kind of negative, dark, depressing energy towards yourself. You have to rise above it, but then recognize when it's time to throw in the towel and say, you know what, I did what I could. I did the best that I could. At some point, you have to be able to just say, yeah, this is above me now. And like I said in the beginning, just be willing and ready to accept whatever comes your way. As long as you did the best that you could, you don't have to deal with any shame or any guilt. As long as you did what you could, and as long as you didn't compromise your integrity or your dignity, you have no reason to walk around with your head low, no matter how unfortunate or unideal, if that's even a word, your circumstances may become. You will rise above it. The sun will ultimately shine on you, and the storm will pass. That is something I sincerely believe. So yes, I just wanted to say one more time, it is okay not to know how things are going to turn out. It is okay, because life is not predictable. You are not guaranteed that you will have the answers for everything or feel certainty in every situation. You will not feel certainty in most situations. You will not know how things will unfold. But that is part of the journey. That is part of your adventure as a human being in this world. You are a spirit having a human experience. And in order to get from where you currently are to where you want to be, you are required to have trust and hope and faith in yourself. Never believe that anything is impossible, because it is impossible to have an impossible thought. And lastly, the secret to life isn't about knowing the future or having the perfect roadmap, but rather having faith for the future and the spirit of a pioneer. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in this journey. Have faith in what is possible for you. Absolutely, 100%. Do not ever let that faith go. That faith is the flame that is keeping the fire within you lit. Don't ever burn it out. On that note, I will say thank you for listening. Tatami amores. Take care.